Hello and welcome to this week's episode. I hope you're well and fighting fit. If you're not, then today's guest may be able to help you get back on track. Chris is a physiotherapist based in Birmingham who has experience of working in hospitals, private practice and with elite sports people. He has a passion for strength training and its benefits for the over 60s, which came from observing his own clients' experiences of pain and suffering. So, along with offering strength training advice and coaching at his physiotherapist practice, Chris has now written a book called Never Too Old to Lift. Now, I am a fan of strength training myself and have been working with a coach for over a year now. So I really enjoy chatting with Chris about his book and, of course, what he's learned about the benefits of strength training as we age. If you're keen to stay strong and fit as you get older, then this episode really is for you. So, without further ado, here's my conversation with Chris. Welcome to the Retirement Cafe podcast, Chris Tiley.
Thanks, Justin. Great to be here.
Yeah, well, I'm really looking forward to talking to you, Chris, and because you're a bit of an expert and written a book called Never Too Old to Lift, which came out last September.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, so it was my little first lockdown project that I worked on. I'd had the Never Too Old to Lift blog running for a while, but suddenly had the time and managed to write the book that I've been meaning to write.
Wow. So tell me, I mean, for people who don't know you and what this book's about, so Never Too Old to Lift. Now, for what, tell the audience a little bit about what it's about and why you're so passionate about it.
So I suppose quick background on me. So I'm a physiotherapist, and so I've been working in various settings. But more recently within the private practice setting, and the populations I tend to see are of an older generation. And I've developed a particular passion for introducing strength training to those people, but to people who never thought it was possible. And I've seen some fantastic results through not only what they can do in the gym, but actually how it impacts their life outside the gym. And I wanted to try and reach more people than just the people I see in the clinic, and try and get some of those ideas and concepts down in words, and try and create a system and a sort of almost a protocol for people to follow to be able to get those same results themselves and see that actually it is possible for them.
Now, Chris, you know, I work with a lot of retirees. And there's a few maybe who take some regular exercise, maybe walking mostly, if that's probably, the idea of going to a gym or weight training in their retirement, I don't think fills a lot of them with a lot of joy, or maybe they just haven't even considered it. Why do you think it's so important?
It's basically from the age of 30, but it accelerates from the age of 50 as we lose muscle strength as we get older,
right,
unless we take specific actions to counter that. And not only can we slow it down, we can actually reverse it and we can gain strength that we've already lost.
Right.
But whilst you've got the strength, it doesn't necessarily mean too much, because at this point, whilst you're able to do everything you want to be able to do, then it doesn't kind of prompt you to want to take action. But the problem is it gradually creeps in, and suddenly, if you're particularly sporting and playing tennis and golf and any of the any sort of sports similar to that, you sort of start to find that they become a bit more difficult. You might get aches that take longer to recover, and then you take the option to, or maybe I'll give that sport up, or I'll take an easier option. And then the more things you give up that were actually maintaining your strength, the quicker the decline happens, and then you find that you're not able to do any of the things that really you were able to enjoy. And it's something that actually, like I say, can be turned around. And strength training is not the only answer, but it's a big contributing factor. Is the amount of strength you've got tends to delay the type of complaints and injuries and niggles that are those that keep you from doing those things.
Yeah. Well, I think as we get older, and I'm very conscious I'm getting older, we all want to stay, I suppose, have more vitality for longer, don't we? We want to be stay fit for longer so that we can enjoy that latter stage of our lives. So, for the people who have never ever considered strength training, just explain. Could you just explain what is strength training in itself?
Yeah, of course. So it doesn't necessarily mean a bar on your back or over your head, and the scary visions for someone who's never done it before, that can be intimidating, and understand that. And actually, once people get into it and get confident with it, then actually they tend to progress to that. But what I mean by strength training is it's any exercise where the outcome of that exercise results in increased strength afterwards. And there's a particular way or intensity that we need to work at in order for that to happen. So you generally want to try and push the muscles to the point of fatigue, and ideally that's within 15 repetitions of an exercise. So repetitions and sets, I'll just clarify, is if you were to do 10 repetitions of, say, a squat exercise where it's equivalent of saying sitting down to a chair and standing up again, you might do 10 in a row. So you've then done 10 repetitions.
Right.
Then you might have a break, and then you go into another 10 repetitions. So you've now done 2 sets of 10. So every additional lot of 10 you do is a set. Okay. So for anyone who's not quite sure what I mean by sets and reps or repetitions, what we're ideally trying to do is if 10 was, say, a target, the 10th one should be almost the last one you can manage. And if you got to 10 and actually you could have done another 5, 6, 7 more quite easily, then it's not to say it's a waste of time, but it's not. There'll still be some benefits, but you won't necessarily get stronger as a result.
Right.
So what we need to start to do is increase the resistance that you're working with, so that the 10th one then becomes pretty much the last one you could manage. There might be 1 or 2 in it, but that's fine. And that, for some people, that might just be body weight for some exercises. For others, they're going to need some form of external resistance. So that might well be the weights, as you think of it in a gym, so a dumbbell, barbell, kettlebell. But equally at home, that could be a bag or rucksack filled with bottles of water, or heavy books. Or I know some people have used building sand and bagged them up into kind of 5 kilo bags, and you can slot those in a rucksack. And it doesn't have to be as in a gym, in that intimidating environment, if it is intimidating to you. It's any way of building that resistance that's enough to reach fatigue. And like I said, ideally it's within 15 repetitions, and then the closer to 5 you get, that's where you really get more strength as a result. So I think that's the basic concept of it. And then there's particular movements that you want to try and reach. There's 7 main functional movement patterns that we work with in strength training, and you want to try and incorporate some of those 7 into the routine, because what we mean by functional movements are they replicate some of the movements that we'll naturally do on a day-to-day basis. And if you've developed them and got them stronger within the gym, then suddenly everything outside the gym becomes a lot easier.
Yeah. So Chris, I understand from everything I've read and from the knowledge I've got from your book that this is just as important for males as well as females. In fact, you could probably even possibly say it's even more important for females.
Yes, definitely. So as well as loss of muscle strength as we get older, we also lose bone density.
Right.
And in females, that loss of bone density is a lot quicker after menopause than it is for males. Wow. So it's more important that we try and maintain as much of that bone density for females. Well, obviously equally important for males, but females will suffer more if they don't do anything.
Right. So this could end up in kind of fractures or bone breakages basically.
Yeah, and I mean I don't like to sort of paint too negative pictures moving forwards, but some of the worst case scenarios I've seen are, as you start to lose bone density, you move into what we call osteopenia, which is kind of the precursor to then osteoporosis.
Right.
And then osteoporosis is that loss of bone density at once you've reached a particular threshold. And then if you were, say, to have a fall, the bones aren't as strong, so they're more likely to fracture.
Right.
And if you then need surgery or just a period of immobility to recover from that, your muscle strength has now had no stimulus to try and maintain it. So you suddenly lose a lot more muscle strength, which means recovery then becomes a lot harder afterwards. And like I said, this is a lot later on down the line, but earlier you try and take steps to avoid it, the less likely it is to happen.
Yeah, and I've seen this firsthand myself, from relatives who've ended up in periods in hospital in their latter years, but because they end up kind of immobile for significant periods of time, that when they went in for one thing, which was nothing to do with physical strength and ability to walk and that type of thing. Maybe it was a heart condition or something. And then once coming out of hospital, kind of 10 weeks later, their ability to walk or to get themselves around is significantly decreased.
Oh, definitely. And it's amazing how quickly it happens.
Yeah. Yeah, so obviously, well, that's all the bad news. But the good news is you can do something about it. And what you're saying, you do something about it at home.
Yes, yeah. It all depends on the equipment you've got available or the ability to create that external resistance. So the gym does have more availability in terms of equipment. There's a lot more things you can use to make the exercise kind of easier to work with. But like I say, you can do this at home. So Amazon is something that's kind of taken over most people's life in the last couple of years, and you can get all sorts of gym equipment on through Amazon, eBay, and places like that.
Yeah.
But like I say, equally, you could do this with things you find around the house that have some weight to them, and as long as you've got enough resistance to push the muscle to fatigue, then you can do this wherever you are. And like for some people, it will be body weight, but generally, as you progress and get stronger, then you'll need the resistance to then be able to get even stronger again, and then even stronger again. And it's something that's progressive. You want to keep pushing to get more, because that's another mistake I see people make, is they finally have found an exercise routine that they can do that feels like it's challenging them, that's pushing them forwards, but then as they do the same weight and the same number of repetitions for a period of time, it then becomes too easy, but they're scared to move on in case it then goes backwards again. So they just keep working with this routine that isn't pushing them enough now, so they're not getting stronger again. And like I said, it's still good to be moving and good to be exercising, but if you're using that time to do it, you might as well get the most out of it.
Okay. So for people listening and thinking, yeah, okay, I'm going to do something about this strength training, I'm going to make sure that I can maintain my body strength. What should be the first steps that they do, really? Where do they go from here?
So if it's something that's never really been on the radar and it's not something that's ever interested them, then they're going to want to really identify some reasons why. So I get people to try and kind of imagine the two futures of one where they become more frail and they've started to have to give things up, and what that might look like. And as a side note with that is, if you have to start giving up your sport and giving up the long family walks, and also maybe even the opportunity to spend days looking after your grandchildren, because it fills you full of dread that how you're going to feel afterwards, is everything you give up, you're also giving up all the social interactions that come with it. So often it's you go and play golf because you have a round with 3 other people, and then you go to the clubhouse and meet even more people afterwards. And if you then can't play golf because the thought of walking 18 holes is just too much, then you're not getting to the clubhouse after either. And then it's a lot of social interactions you give up. Whereas actually, if you're currently playing golf and you want to continue that, and you want to really enjoy the time with grandchildren, and you want to continue the family walks and all those kind of opportunities, then that's what you want to use as your two motivations. So whether you're more of a stick or carrot person is you want to move towards that active future, that you're still doing that in 10 years time, or you want to avoid becoming frail and not being able to do that. And really thinking about the why will help keep that motivation when the motivation starts to wane. Then we also want to start to think about some of the barriers to keeping that motivation. So you kind of want to start to think, are you going to do it in the gym? Are you going to do it at home? If you're going to do it at home, where are you going to do it? Where are you going to store the equipment? How easy is it to get the equipment out? What can I do to make it easier and take away some of the friction to even getting started in the first place? Because if it's a real mental effort to have to get things out or go into another room to bring it in and then bring it all out again, it's those type of things that on a day where you're feeling a low motivation, it's just going to be easy to say, oh, I'll leave it to tomorrow. And then I'll leave it to tomorrow. And then that turns into a week of not doing it. And then you just give up with it. So the more you've thought about that in advance and create strategies around it, the easier it is to avoid it being an issue.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, I interestingly have never really done much gym work, but last summer I completed a triathlon, and after that I'd done a few over a couple of years, and I thought, I need to change things a little bit. I thought I might. I'd been doing some gym work in increasing my leg strength for the bike ride, and I quite enjoyed it. And I watched. And one of the things I did enjoy about the gym was that you could very quickly see the gains. If you know that you've pushed a certain weight. If I've pushed 5 kilograms one day and then within a month I'm pushing 10, you can see the transition, and therefore you realize that you are making, significant gains. And that I found that quite rewarding. The thing I did, of course, the thing I realized that I'm always very quick to do is I realized that I didn't know what I was doing. And so, I'd found myself a local gym. And it suited my lifestyle because it was open 24 hours a day, so I could go at some crazy hours that fitted into my family life. But I got a trainer. I got someone to help me because I just accepted that. Why would I know my way around all these machines, or even on the free weights, the dumbbells, etc. Why would I know how to do this properly?
And it is really common, and it kind of brings me on to the next part of how you get started. You've identified the motivations for wanting to strength train. You've worked out where you're going to do it and taken away some of the barriers. But the next thing is you need to create a plan, and that plan needs to include what exercises you're going to do, and then how we're going to progress it over a period of time. And I kind of liken it to the couch to 5K for running. Is the reason it works so well is because you don't have to think about anything other than walking out the door, turn the app on, and it tells you what you're going to do that day.
Right.
Because again, if you have to walk into a gym and decide, okay, what am I going to do today, and then think about it, that takes quite a lot of mental effort. And if you're in a day where you're feeling a sort of low motivation, you're not really in the mood for it, that could be enough to go, I don't know what to do. I forget today. Whereas actually, if you can refer to your plan and say, right, today I'm doing this workout of these 4 exercises, and I'm going to aim for 12 repetitions where I hit that fatigue point. This is the weight I used last week. Right, I can get set up. Let's go.
Yeah.
And you don't have to think or plan anything because you did the planning in the early stages. Yeah. So, whether that's through learning, say through somewhere for you never too old to lift, or whether that's using a trainer, it's using the knowledge of someone to create a program, I say for you. But the reason I set up Never Too Old to Lift was to try and give people a little bit of knowledge so they can adapt and progress things themselves. Because what I found was that a lot of people were finding that if they looked at an online program that's a kind of one size fits all, is they really struggle to find a starting point with some of the exercises. Some of them they can do fine, but other ones the knee is too painful, so that they then can't do that exercise. So rather than adapt it so they can do it, they just skip that one. But if it's one they can't do, it's probably one they need to do. So the more you give up the ones you should be doing, the more that's going to become an issue later on.
Yeah. And Chris, how long do you think? How long should someone train for? how many times a week and how long for?
Well, if you look at the World Health Organization, their physical activity guidelines, they suggest that everyone should be doing at least 2 sessions of muscle strengthening.
Right.
But actually, if you look closer, that's for people aged 18 to 64. If you look at 65 plus, they actually say 3 sessions per week, because I think they identified that because we're losing it at a faster rate, we need to do more to maintain it. So I'd recommend to people at least 2. If you can, 3 is fantastic.
And I'm kind of getting the impression that this is even more important than maybe the aerobic exercise that everyone's been encouraged to do over the last number of years, to later on in life.
Yeah, I think they're pretty equal. I think really it's more that the strength gets ignored, and with the World Health Organization guidelines, most people can tell you the aerobic minutes you should be doing if anyone knows about that side of things. So they say if we're working at moderate intensity, we should be doing 150 minutes a week, or if working at vigorous intensity, we should be doing 75 minutes a week. And people think, right, to get the minutes in, I'll do my running or cycling or swimming. And then more people, as you start to develop slight problems with the knee or hip or ankle, you give up the running and you stick to the swimming and the Pilates or cycling or something that doesn't have much impact associated with it. And you can get your heart rate up and you can get the minutes in. But if you're not providing the stimulus to build strength, then you find that you start to lose it, and most people ignore the strength side of things and they just work on the aerobic side. So the aerobic's just as important, but it gets more of the attention than the strength does.
Right. So the strength gets left behind.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, and then of course, as a physiotherapist, you're going to know a lot about this one. But tell me about, do people then, pick up injuries while they're strength training?
It's a common fear is that if you lift heavy weights, you're going to get injured. And I'm not going to deny there's risks associated with it, but equally there's risk associated with running. And it's, if you try to train for a marathon without doing the early stage and you jumped in at the kind of week 10 on your training program, you're probably going to pick up a knee injury. Equally with the strength training, if you jump in and try and push too quickly with the weights, you might well pick up a complaint that then forms into an injury. And it's about making sure we firstly recognize that if we're an older adult, we're not going to be able to work at the rate or progress at the rate that a 20-year-old would be able to. And equally, if we do pick up a complaint, you're not going to be able to recover quite as quickly either. So it's taking things a little bit slower, and that's where fitting into that plan works. So I tend to work on build familiarity with the exercises, start to kind of push a little bit and work at finding a comfortable fatigue point at around 15 repetitions with a lighter weight, and then you can gradually work week by week to increase the weight to reduce the repetitions that you hit that fatigue point later on. But yeah, there are injuries that happen, but if you follow a plan and you follow a few rules, you can generally mitigate those risks. And for me, there's far more risk by not doing the strength training and being weaker, and you fall into the trap of that lack of strength then leads to another injury. And there's being immobile and inactive it increases the risk of injury than being active in the gym and doing the strength training. So one of the things I like to think about as I use finance and personal finance as a bit of a link in with the strength training, and you might be different from most people, but what I tend to say with people is that no one really enjoys saving or investing money. They like the spending the money, but in order to spend it later on in life, you need to have done some saving and some investment. And I see the strength training as a form of investment to allow you to spend your kind of physical activity in terms of your tennis or your other sports that you do. So if it's not something that's interested you, you're not doing that instead of what you want to do. You're doing it so that you can do the things that you want to do. So there, I thought that was an analogy that fitted in with your background.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the longer that you invest in your health and keep strong, the more benefits that you get. So yeah, perfect. So for people listening who want to know more about the work that you do and the book and your website, etc., where do they go from here?
So a couple of options. So the first is the Never Told to Lift website. So it's nevertoldtolift.com. Plenty of resources in there. I've created a lot of blog posts. There's one called What Are Reps as Sets, and it's a beginner's guide to strength training. So it gives a few ideas of the terms used and some of the principles I've discussed. Another one called 7 Functional Movements that talks about what those movements are and ideas that you might be able to do to regress them to get started and then progress them again once you have got started. We've obviously mentioned the ebook, which it started off as an ebook that you can download on the site, but it's now available as a paperback on Amazon. So if you go to Amazon and just search Never Told to Lift, it should be the first one that comes up. And then the thing that I've been a bit more active with in the last month or two is YouTube. So I've just created a 3-part video series that tries to help people understand why they should be doing strength training, and then starts to move on to some of the basics on how you can get started on your own if you want to, and then it introduces again the book for anyone who's sort of still a bit nervous about getting started.
Fantastic. Well, there's a whole heap of resources for people who want to get involved and start looking at it. I highly recommend it. I've really enjoyed it. I'm still doing my aerobic kind of program, but I do enjoy getting to the gym and seeing the progress that I'm making. And I have been, yes, very, very conscious as I've moved beyond 50 that strength is waning, and I need to do something about it. So I think the work you're doing, Chris, is fantastic, and bringing this information to the wider world is hugely beneficial for everyone who's listening. So thanks for your time today. I've really enjoyed chatting to you, and you're doing some great work. So I really appreciate that, and I'll put all the links to the website and to the Amazon book and your information where people can get in touch with you if they've got some questions.
Yeah, definitely. And if anyone does have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer those. So there's a contact page on the website. Just send a message on there, and it might not be straight away, but I try and do it within a few days. I'll get back to any questions that you might have.
Brilliant. Well, once again, Chris, thanks for your time, and really enjoyed chatting to you.
No, thank you very much.
Thanks once again to Chris Tiley for chatting to me about his book, Never Too Old to Lift, and his experience of strength training. To find out more about what we discussed, head over to the show notes page on our website at theretirementcafe.co.uk, where you'll find some useful links. Remember that if you prefer to watch my conversations, you will find them all on my YouTube channel, which is Justin King MFP, and you'll find a load of videos, a whole host of videos to help you plan and live a successful retirement. And as always, if you have found this podcast helpful, please share it with a friend or write a review to help more people like you find us. So until next time, this is Justin King helping you feel more informed in your retirement.